There we go. All right, so we're in part number 7 of What Should I Plant, and we're going to talk about preparing the ground for seeding, also known as getting a good seed bed. So let's jump right into it. So as I think about this, I usually break these down into 2 distinct categories, Eric, and for me those, if you're going to do a tilled method or a no-till.
Yeah, I think that's right, Dallas. There are some variations, of course, on each of those methods, but those are the basic 2.
Okay, so a tilled seed bed is something that looks generally like this, where we've got some bare ground and some bare dirt that we've prepared using implements from, a plow to a disc or whatever. And a no-till method would be going into some type of existing vegetation, whether that's rangeland grasses out there, or perhaps it's been farmed and we've got some standing stubble of some type of crop. But the way you're going to go about preparing these 2 seed beds is vastly different, and the way you're going to go about seeding into them needs some differences as well. So should we discuss the tilled one first?
Let's go ahead and talk about that tilled seed bed. Well, Dallas, when we're talking about a tilled seed bed, it's a tilled seed bed. That means there's been some tillage in there. We've had some tillage implements out there to take out whatever it was in there before, to reduce competition or break up sod, and prepare that seed bed then for the acceptance of the seed that we're trying to get into it. That may include plowing or disking. That's sort of heavy tillage depending on how the condition of that ground that you had to begin with, breaking that soil up and getting it kind of fluffy. And then after you get it kind of fluffy, then you need to be able to go back in and pack it in order to build a seed bed that's suitable for accepting that seed. You need to pack it so that it's a good, nice, firm seed bed. We'll talk a lot about a firm seed bed, Dallas.
Yeah, and as we look at this picture here, this implement being pulled behind this tractor, that's the intent of that. Is you can see over here to the left of him, it looks like some ground that's been disked, and then as he drags that implement across, it packs that ground up and makes it ready for the seed. I think something to mention on preparing a tilled seed bed is this process is expensive. And when you get out there and you start dragging plows and discs and packers across the ground, each trip is going to cost money and fuel and equipment and time. So it's a big investment going into doing a seed bed that you're going to prepare with tillage. So you've got a heck of a lot more expense out there than just the expense of the seed.
That's right, Alice, and that's why there exists that second method that we'll talk about here in a minute, is that no-till, is to avoid a lot of those economic investments that we want to run into when we're running that horsepower over the top of some ground. Dallas, can't emphasize enough that there are far more seedings that fail as a result of putting the seed into the ground too far. And when you put the seed into the ground too far, it's probably because you have too soft a seed bed. You can't control the depth of your drill, and it just puts that seed in too far. And what happens is when that seed germinates, it's only got a certain amount of reserves, and if it can't make it out of the soil and begin to collect that sunlight, it's going to die before it gets out.
Yep, and we'll come back to this principle too, but what we call the 3 bears principle, or the Goldilocks principle, where the 3 bears ate the porridge and one said not too hot, the other said not too cold, just right. Well, that's the idea of this preparing that seed bed. You don't want it too hard. You want to be able to get that soil-to-seed contact there, but probably more importantly, you don't want it too soft. You don't want that seed buried too deep in the ground. So what we're looking for, again, is that idea of just right. So, Eric, we've got a little video here. Why don't we skip to that, and we'll pick it up there. All right, so this is a video that we're shot in a prepared seed bed, and you can see there where I walk in and push my foot there, and I'm showing how far my foot went down in the ground there. So that's about the idea of what you want. Let me play this again, and we'll watch that, and we'll pause it right as I step down, right there. So, Eric, how far do you think that I'm going down in the ground there?
Well, I think your footprint's probably about 1/4 of an inch to maybe 3/8 of an inch. It's much firmer than most people would think about, and it's kind of a challenge to get a seed bed that firm, particularly if you've tilled it a lot.
So as you think your seed bed's ready and you're walking out there across your seed bed and you're your boots are sinking in all the way up past your sole, that's probably a sign it's way too loose. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. You know, if you can look behind you and track yourself by the you know potholes out there, you know that it's too soft.
Okay. All right, so that's a tilled seed bed. So let's go back and discuss maybe the idea of a no-till seeding. All right, so let's talk about the other option. This is using a no-till seeding method to establish whatever it is you're planting in. As you can see, this fella here, he's driving that drill across a stand of stubble. So it's not a prepared seed bed. It's and that's the idea of what a no-till drill or a no-till seeding is doing. It's going into that. So Eric, I think the big idea in a no-till seeding is controlling that competition. And if you're seeding into perennial plants, plants that come back every year, well, you're going to have done something to those plants to make sure they don't come back aggressively and overtake your seedlings.
Well, that's right. You know, if you think about what you're trying to accomplish when you're doing your tillage, you're taking all the competition that's out there away. You're also building your seed bed, but that second critical objective is taking out the competition. And so when you're preparing a no-till seed bed, competition is a important thing to control.
Yeah. So some of the ways we do that would be with a spray. That's probably the most common way, is using a general herbicide such as Roundup, and you spray those plants when they're actively growing and kill them before you go out there and seed your new seeding. Burning can also be a way of doing that, or some combination of spraying and burning, but again, those get expensive. And then I mentioned annuals there. If you're seeding into, sometimes when we're reclaiming ground, you'll hear of folks going in with an annual crop such as oats, and then they harvest those oats generally before those seeds are viable. And so you've really controlled the competition of that seed bed by planting an annual crop in there and harvesting it before it produces viable seeds. So there's another option of preparing those seed bed. But again, I think the important thing is remembering to control that competition so that those plants that you're planting here have a good chance of getting established.
Yeah, that's right, and it's important to think about where you're starting from. If you're trying to seed into an old annual grain field, it's a lot different than trying to seed into a stubble field, and you'll need to take on some different tactics in order to manage that competition.
Again, I guess in preparing a no-till seed bed, that soil-to-seed contact is critical. The ground needs to be soft enough that seed is getting in the soil, but not too soft that you're getting it in too deep again. So you still need to pay attention to that seed placement when you're doing a no-till seed. So. All right, so I think we've covered some of the ideas of preparing the ground for seeding, hopefully giving you some ideas to work from there, and we'll pick it up on the next part.
And in the next part, we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about some mechanics, and we're going to talk about the features on a drill.
All right.